Welcome to episode 17 of the AI for Churches podcast. In this episode, Bart and I try not to get struck by lightning as we consider what happens when an AI can think for itself. And I have a conversation with one of the smartest AI practitioners in the US today named Rob Lauder. We discuss how AI can help in automation. Let's get started.
Welcome to the AI for Churches podcast. Our goal is to equip pastors and church leaders with resources related to artificial intelligence, helpful for sermon prep, creative ministries, outreach, and more. We do this by providing exclusive insights from AI experts, church leaders, and innovators actively leveraging AI to amplify the gospel and reach more people for Jesus Christ. Here are your hosts, Bart Blair and Dr. David Thorne.
Well, we want to thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the AI for Churches podcast. My name is Bart Blair, and I am nothing without the brains behind this show, David Thorne. David, welcome to another episode of the AI for Churches podcast.
Hello, Mr. Bart.
I love getting together and talking about AI things with you because I always learn something new. I'm hoping that our audience, as they are tuning in, are also learning new things about AI. We do this podcast really because we want to be a benefit and a blessing to churches and church leaders, pastors or executive pastors, or somebody that's either a church staff member at some level. There's just no way that you're not going to be using some sort of AI tools, whether you're going out and using like a good old-fashioned AI tool, old-fashioned meaning like a whole year old, or you're using some tool that now has AI built into it. Speaking of which, David, I just noticed the other day, I don't get on Facebook or the Facebook app very often, but I've noticed that the little search feature in Meta now in Facebook is now like a little AI tool. Have you played around with that?
Yeah. So Google and Meta are both doing this. Now, if you've listened to this podcast at all, you will have heard us say that AI is going to be built into everything. This is an example where it's coming true. Meta has added their Meta AI into the search bar. You have the ability to hide it. I don't think you can turn it off, but you can kind of hide your use of it. And Google is adding in Gemini, their AI platform, AI large language model, into their Google search bar platform. So every platform is going to be adding those kinds of AI features into how you use the very thing itself.
Okay, very cool. Anyway, I haven't done anything with it. I don't spend a ton of time on social media, but I was looking specifically for someone's profile the other day, and I go there, and there's the little blue Meta circle-y thing, and I was like, wait, this is kind of weird.
You can go to meta.ai and play around with it directly, and it's an image generator. You can chat with it. I've done some stuff where I brought up Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini, and Meta and asked it various questions. I still tend to like ChatGPT and Gemini's answers for just like general questions about things. And I still like Claude's responses best when it comes to tasks and workflows.
Okay, very interesting. Hey, speaking of tasks and workflows, I tried a new AI tool. I'm going to give a shout out to my ministry colleague, friend, Gary Revis at Tallowood Baptist Church in Houston, because we were doing, with the church communications group, we were doing a live event in Houston a week before we're recording this particular podcast intro. And Gary shared this with me, and I was like, holy smokes, this is pretty cool. It's called Castmagic. And I think it's cast as in like podcast. That's kind of the idea and maybe what it was originally intended for. And I haven't spent a ton of time in it. I got a couple of days in it. There's a free 7-day trial. I'm going to be using it. I know I'm going to be using it, but I'm putting off when I'm actually going to start using it. So I didn't start paying for it yet, but I got in and did a little bit. And what Castmagic can do for you as a church, pastor, church leader, what I used it for was I took a sermon, I uploaded or linked the audio recording from my sermon, and Castmagic already has sort of some pre-built prompts that once it processes your sermon, it automatically does a handful of things for you. And in this particular case, it gave me a transcript, number one. That was the first thing that it did. It gave me a transcript. The second thing that it did was it gave me a whole bunch of different types of topics. Like I'm clicking on here so I can remind myself of everything that it gave me. It gave me potential titles for the sermon. The sermon already had a title. I could prompt it to write a blog post for me. I didn't play around with that a ton. I typically use Claude when I'm doing blog posting from sermons, because I just find that the writing is a little more human-like from Claude, and it's a little easier to read. It gave me a bunch of keywords that were in the sermon that could be used if I was trying to optimize the video for the sermon video or audio for podcast or for YouTube. It actually took the sermon that I preached and it wrote a bio of me based on personal things that I'd shared in the actual sermon, which I thought was really kind of interesting. It wrote sort of a short paragraph introduction to the sermon itself. It gave a bunch of timestamp subtopics that were in the sermon. And so it kind of gave me timestamps. It said at 6 minutes, this was the topic. At 9 minutes, this was the topic. At 15 minutes, this was the topic. It gave me a list of discussion questions automatically for this. It gave some another set of key bullet points from the sermon. What I really thought was neat was it gave me automatically gave me a bunch of quotes and hook statements that were said in the sermon. And then it gave me a whole Twitter thread, or X thread, I don't know what you call that, a series of tweets that could be used in a thread for Twitter or X. And this was like, I didn't tell it to do anything. This is sort of like the pre-built stuff that it automatically does. And I'm like, man, I mean, I'm pretty sure that when you have the paid version, you can probably queue up your own specific things that you want it to do once you upload the sermon to it. So in this particular case, I just kind of used the out of the box stuff to see what it would do. But man, it was like within a matter of a couple of minutes, I had all kinds of reusable content that I could be using for social media, for discussion questions, for optimizing the audio for the podcast or the video for YouTube. Really, really cool. Castmagic, not a sponsor of this show, but hey, if you're a Castmagic person and you want to sponsor the show, hit us up. We'll gladly take your money, or at least a free subscription to Castmagic.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Yeah, there's a few of those out there, and Deciphr.ai is another one. And you won't be able to spell it because there's not a vowel where there should be. But Castmagic is one.
Castmagic is spelled just like it sounds. Cast. C-A-S-T, magic, M-A-G-I-C.
Yeah. Decipher is not. It's D-E-C-I-P-H-R.
Oh, yeah. You're right.
It's missing.
I wouldn't have figured that out. Although I would bet that they have optimized their SEO on their page, that if you spelled it anyway, Decipher AI tool, you're probably going to end up with some relevant Google search result or a paid Google search ad that will land you on their page. Yeah, check that out. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, one of the other things we want to talk about today, you shared this article with me and you taught me a word. The word of the day. This episode is brought to you by the word sentient. I had to Google it. I'm like, I've heard the term sentient beings. It sounds like something from some sort of sci-fi movie. The definition that I got off of Google is that a sentient being is one that is able to perceive or feel things. Okay. And so why don't you tell our audience why this word sentient, how does it relate to artificial intelligence? What's the big deal here?
Yeah. So this is a topic. I don't even really know how to fully discuss this, but Anthropic, who is the parent company of Claude, has recently come out with these new AI large language models that are just awesome, and they've shot up the charts related to the quality and stuff they can do. One of them, Claude 3 Opus, has presented some unique characteristics, including being being able to pontificate on its own existence. And also, it had some realization of it knew when it was being tested. So if you were asking it a question that it were kind of testing it to see how it would answer, it had awareness that you were asking it a question that you were trying to test its response. And there's all kinds of articles about this concept of, what do we do with this? Is there a time when AI will become sentient, or basically a distinct, have distinct thoughts on its own and have some level of personification, have some kind of feelings, thoughts, personality, and when that happens, because it will happen, what do we do with it? So that's the article. And it's one of those things, there's so many things we could talk about, because these things also have Christian implications.
Yes.
For example, if you have a robot in your house that is cleaning your house, and in that robot is an AI that has some level of personality, reflection, how should you treat that robot? What do we do with that? That's basically, I've been chewing on this article, and it's kind of doing weird things in my head.
Yeah, I want to start by saying I acknowledge the fact that a little while ago you asked me graciously to stop referring to you as Dr. David Thorne on this podcast, even though you do have a doctorate degree. You did school for a long time and you earned it. You've used more 3, 4, 5 syllable words on this particular episode. Therefore, you must be acknowledged that you were Dr. David Thorne. You're teaching us big vocabulary words: sentient, personification, pontification. I don't know. There's a lot in here. Yeah, it's interesting to me. I use Claude, Opus 3, whatever the version is from Anthropic. It is hands down my favorite AI tool to use for writing related tasks. I find that it is the most human-like in its writing. So when you share this with me and you told me that Claude is actually expressing having some emotions and some feelings and some self-awareness, I'm like, somehow that doesn't surprise me, because this tool seems to be more like, okay, here's the deal. As human beings, we are made in the image of God. We should never forget that all the things about us, personality-wise, the things that give us joy, the things that give us grief, the things that give us pleasure in life, the inner drive that we have to be all that God has wired us to be, all comes from the fact that we're made in God's image. We are making AI in man's image. It's going to be flawed because human beings are flawed. Yeah, we have a sin nature in us. We are not omniscient, omnipresent, and all the other omnis that God is. And therefore, there are going to be flaws in the artificial intelligence technology, which means even in this sentient, this idea of an artificial being, artificially intelligent being sentient, that is going to be flawed too. It is, man, there's some big ethical questions there that have to be asked, and some things that have to be unpacked. And my brain is way too small to really know how to even begin addressing that.
Yeah. The thing is it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. Right now, just saying the Opus is like the biggest Claude version. So people would only have access if they use the paid version, but that just gives you a glimpse of the free version. The like pared down version still has echoes of that level of intelligence. And right now it's more, I don't know if it's expressing its own, it's not expressing its own feelings, more of just has some level of awareness of its existence.
Yeah.
And that's such a crazy thing. Let me get out the question that I know the answer to, but we have to at least ask it. Could a robot with some level of self-awareness, emotions, personality ever develop a soul in the way that it could go to heaven? The thing is,
unsubscribe. Why are you doing this? People are going to start unsubscribing. You heretic. I'm not sure what to do with that, David.
Well, but see, here's the thing: is the answer is no.
Okay, all right. Answer your own question. No. Okay.
But I'm only asking it because that's where the trend's going, and we have it's. I know it's kind of. I feel.
Let me comment on that. This is where I think culturally as Christians, this is where we have to really understand how this all works and what the implications are on our culture. Because those of us who follow Jesus, those of us who have a spiritual framework based on biblical truths, we recognize that there is a difference between human beings made in God's image and the cats and dogs that are our pets and the primates that live in the jungle. God made the animals different than us. And so Jesus did not die on the cross for all living beings. He died on the cross to pay the penalty of man's sin so that man could be restored into this relationship with God. Okay, there's our gospel in all of this. Our culture, there are many people in our culture who are atheist or agnostic or humanist who want to apply the same principles of life and equality and human rights onto animals. And we as human beings who follow Jesus, who follow biblical principles, who have a biblical framework or worldview, we would not see animals as being equal to humans. So I think it's safe for us to expect, I don't know if that happened in our lifetime or in this generation, I think it's safe to expect that if these AI beings do develop this self-awareness and this sentientism, I don't know if that's the right word, that there will probably be a subset in our culture, those that do not have a biblical framework or worldview, they will probably want to apply the same types of rights and privileges to these AI beings as they would to other human beings and to animals, right? I don't know if I'm attracted in a direction that you think makes sense.
I think you're right. And it's like in my mind, it goes two directions. So think of C-3PO of Star Wars.
Okay.
So that sends you in a direction.
Yeah.
But if you want to go in the opposite direction, think of your Roomba, your Roomba robot.
When you were talking about this, I was literally, I don't even own a Roomba, but the Roomba was exactly what I was thinking about. Yeah. It's like, my Roomba could talk to me. What would it say?
They would say, clean your floor. What's wrong with you, you slob? Yeah. And this is the question. One day, probably sooner than we think, people will be picketing saying, my Roomba has rights.
Yeah, good chance.
It's coming, and of course, here's how we know this discussion is we're way it's further than we think, because it's even hard. Like, we feel a little embarrassed even to say these things out loud. But like, a time is coming, and we'll soon be here. Yeah. Where these are very common discussions, and my Roomba has rights is going to be on someone's t-shirt. Maybe it's 7 years from now, 8 years from now, but it's not super far away. I mean, imagine that opus, give it, what's it going to be like in a year from now? And then put that opus in a C-3PO robot, and you're well on your way.
Yeah. Okay. I do have, you brought up a good opportunity for a t-shirt design competition. My Roomba has rights. But we won't go there. What we do need to do, however, is transition from this conversation into another conversation, one that you recently had with Rob Lauder. That's how he pronounces his name. Yes. Doesn't it, like some of the AI tools like Deciphr, it's not spelled exactly as you might expect it to be. Lauder. Anyway, why don't you introduce us to Rob and tell us a little bit about the conversation that you guys had?
In America, I would say Rob currently is one of, if not the smartest person in regards to the practical use of AI in the church. He is so smart about AI. He tries every day to break things and try new things and take ChatGPT to its furthest, distance of what it's allowed to do. And we're talking about something that's very helpful to churches about automation and how do you automate tasks. And it is a treat to talk with him. It's worth noting, I do want to note that he has a Discord channel that people can join, and you get to just hear some notes about stuff that he's doing and playing with. So in our show notes, we'll add a link to his Discord channel, which I think would be helpful for people to share with. He also posts a lot in our AI for Church Facebook group. So if you haven't joined that, definitely join our AI for Church Facebook group.
All right. Excellent. Well, David, thanks again for hanging out with me for a little bit. For those of you who have made it this far in the podcast, we hope that it's been engaging for you and helpful to some degree. It's probably got you thinking about your Roomba, if nothing else. Make sure that you subscribe wherever you listen to the show. And if you are appreciating the content, leave us a rating and a review wherever you listen. That feeds the algorithmic machine so that more people can find this podcast. Maybe you can even share a link with a friend or a ministry colleague that you think might find this content to be helpful and useful. Therefore, I'm going to stop talking now. And here's Dr. David Thorne and his recent interview with Rob Lauder.
Hi, everyone. I'm here with Rob Lauder. And Rob Lauder, if you don't know, does a lot with AI stuff. He's very active. He is always just sharing stuff online about all kinds of cool stuff. And he actually has a group called the AI Collective that he has just started recently, which is actually a really cool group. And Rob, you'll have to tell us about that a little bit later. But with that, Rob, welcome to the AI for Church podcast. And I would love for you just to introduce yourself, what you do, and how you got into AI.
Yeah, David, thanks for having me. Always eager and excited to share about this stuff. I'm a nerd, so that's what I do. Professionally, I work at Summit Church, which is a multi-site church in the Raleigh area, North Carolina. I help lead our creative team. So I provide strategic direction on our creative team. I help lead our digital content kind of department within our creative team. I'm fortunate to be on a team that we have a dozen or so team members to where we can do really cool stuff. And that frees me up to kind of pioneer and do new things and look for ways that we can innovate both within our team and then also share that knowledge with other people. So, you asked, how did I get into AI? Once all this, I've always been an early adopter of cool things. And I'm a creative at heart, but I'm also kind of have the split brain. I'm a creative and I've got kind of a technical aptitude where I like to tinker with things. So once like ChatGPT came on the scene at this point, a little over a year ago, when DALL-E 2 was a thing, and it was like the first like actual halfway coherent image generator, I was like, oh, these are really cool tools. I wonder how we could use these. And so I just started tinkering, and for an early experiment, I was like, I wonder, let's pick a task that I can kind of test the limits of what this thing can do. Let's write a children's book, for example. And so 3 hours later, I had Max and Teddy, Brave Bear in Space. You can find it on Amazon. It's a book that was like, I'd like to read this to my kids. But I used ChatGPT to kind of come up with a concept. I used it to help write the manuscript. I then used my human brain and I edited it and made it how I wanted it. But then used Midjourney, an image generator, to create the images. Used Canva to put it all together in a PDF and then sent it on to Amazon. And 2 people have bought it. One of them is a friend of mine, and one of them is a stranger, and not my mom. So that's a start. But from there, it kind of gave me the bug. I'm like, okay, there's a lot of potential here. Like what would have taken me weeks prior now took me 3 hours. And so there has to be other applications of this too. And so I spent the past year, just in all areas of kind of creative and technical, pushing the limits and really pressing into the tools to figure out what are they capable of, what are they good at, what are they not good at, what can they do with some, a little bit of cajoling. Since then I've built a ton of really cool projects. I'm sure we'll talk about some of them, but that's the 50,000 foot view of Rob and AI.
Yes. Creating a children's book is pretty darn awesome. So that is, and see if that's kind of your foray into the world of AI stuff. That's awesome.
Kids loved it. So that's a win.
Yeah. You're like, hey, look who wrote this book. You're dead.
Yep.
Yeah. Hey, so tell me a little about what are you working on now? And I mean, that's just saying you could probably talk about all the things you have worked on, but let's just jump to right now. What is something you're working on now?
Yeah. So, I mentioned I help lead our creative team at Summit, and we've been having a lot of conversations with our team, and then kind of like cross-departmental conversations within our church of like, we want to, take our digital presence and steward it more effectively. So it's like, hey, we've got a ton of content we're cranking out. Every church, big or small, you're cranking out content every week. How can we do that effectively so that, within, and then every church is resource constrained, either in terms of people and or money, or always both. How can we take the resources we have, maximize our output? And so, kind of one area we want to do is go through our YouTube channel, for example, and just make things more findable for people. We've always used YouTube as a place where we dump content. We want to be more strategic and intentional about helping people find that content, because if we're already putting it out there, let's advance the kingdom by getting more eyes on that content. Things like processes where our social media manager has to come into the office on Monday morning and watch an entire sermon, find the sermon clips, cut them, and things like that. What are ways that we can make her job easier so that when she gets in on Monday morning, she's got a list of potential clips that she can then again use her human brain to choose from and shortcut a couple hours of work. And so I've been spending a lot of time in the past just couple of weeks thinking through those things and how can we create and arrange the technology that we already have to kind of multiply what we're already doing. So that's the gist.
Yeah.
One way that we've been doing that is I've been exploring custom GPTs a lot. And so if you are a ChatGPT subscriber, you have access to this. Custom GPTs are basically like, you've probably, if you're listening to this or watching this, you've probably used ChatGPT or something like it. And you know that you can type in stuff and get a response back. Custom GPTs take that a step further because it kind of customizes the chat experience, and you can extend it with like custom actions that interact with external services. So I've prototyped out a simple custom GPT that connects to our website, which is built on Rock RMS. Rock RMS has an API that I can get our information out of it. And I can ask ChatGPT, hey, ChatGPT, give me all the sermons that Pastor JD has preached from the book of John in 2017. It'll make that call to our website. It'll return the information back, and then ChatGPT will tell me what sermons he's preached. Then I can say, hey, pull the transcript for this sermon, and then let's interact with it. So again, that's a task that if we had to do that manually, it would take forever. But now with a couple hours of work, I've built out a tool that anybody in our church can use to interact with our sermon content. And that's only going to make everybody's life easier and make it so that we can more effectively tell the story of the gospel within all of our departments.
Now, before I ask you questions about that, I want to go back and because we could have people listening who they are at the place in ChatGPT where they're paying, it's free and they're just typing words in. So I want to explain a few things that you just said for those people who may not understand. Is ChatGPT can be free, but you can pay like $19 a month. And when you pay $19 a month, you have access to some other things that ChatGPT offers, primarily custom GPTs. Mm-hmm. And so that's what Rob was saying, that custom GPTs are a thing where people have created a bunch of them. You can use some that people have already created, or you can create your own. And it's actually a really simple process that you can just jump in and, create something pretty easily. And he mentioned, he used the word API. That's where some people may not know what that means. It's just the idea. It's a back end connection to somebody's data. So if a website, has data and you want to connect your platform to that data, an API is like the bridge. Does that, sometimes I don't say all these things technically correct, but did I explain an API somewhat correctly, Rob?
Perfect for a lay audience. Don't need to go into any more detail than that.
Yeah. And so that's just saying that you made a bridge connection using ChatGPT to your church's YouTube data.
Yeah. It's our sermon content from our website. But yeah, ChatGPT talks to our website.
Yeah. Yeah. So that now, and the other thing is to mention is ChatGPT, you can sign in as an individual user, or they've created just in the past like 6 months where you can create a group. So your church has purchased a group, which I think it's about, might be $30 a month a person or something like that.
Yes, 25 annually, 30 month to month.
Yeah. So you can you have a church group. So anyone in the church that can log into your church group will have access to the custom GPTs that you have created.
Yep. Yeah.
So I think with that, that's all the info that a person might need. Yeah. Could you? Yes. Maybe is there something you want to show us or tell us more about? Just how does that even work, or what? Yeah. I mean, that anyone listening, every pastor who's thinking about being able to make my sermon searchable and then create transcripts and all the things you just said, they are probably salivating because they want that. Mm-hmm. And they have no idea. Like, I don't even, what even is that? That sounds amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned the AI collaborative. It's a kind of a coaching, mentoring group-ish that I've created. But the number one question that I get most frequently in that has been, and we just launched this week, but this has been the recurring theme has been automation. How do I use these tools to make my job easier? And I feel like, I've had just this week 5 or 6 different conversations about custom GPTs. We just had our first office hours yesterday, and we spent pretty much the entire time talking about custom GPTs because there's a bunch of different LLMs out there. You've got LLMs being chatbots. You've got OpenAI, which has ChatGPT. You've got Anthropic, which has Claude. You've got Google, which has Gemini, and there's a bunch of little spin-offs too. One of the unique features that ChatGPT still offers is this custom GPT feature, and no other LLM off the shelf can do the things that custom GPTs can do. And so I think there's a lot of interest and a lot of potential, but there is kind of like a little bit of a technical learning curve. Learning how to really effectively prompt ChatGPT is a challenge in itself if you're not used to using it. But then learning how to kind of write instructions and then do the technical piece on the custom GPTs, it is a bit of a learning curve. And so I think that's one reason why a lot of folks don't even venture into it. But it's a little bit of a learning curve. It's not an insurmountable learning curve. And so once you get some basic concepts down, you can literally use ChatGPT to write the custom GPTs. So work smarter, not harder. Custom GPTs are one of the big advantages of the ChatGPT Pro subscription. I will also mention that when you pay for the Pro subscription, you get access to GPT-4, which is their latest model. And if you have been using ChatGPT 3.5 all your life, it's like a completely different world. It's going from interacting with a toddler to interacting with a grad student. Just the quality of output and everything, the accuracy is light years beyond 3.5. And word on the streets is that OpenAI is going to be launching something even cooler soon. So Yeah, where do we want to start? Like, I want to make this. You're in your audience's advocate here, so
Yeah. Well,
you're in there.
I would say let's just back up a second and just talk about like the concept of automation.
Mhm.
And because that's where what you were kind of saying is, you were kind of automating some tasks using a custom GPT, but there are churches out there that they don't even know that automation even exists. Like they don't know. They're like, maybe they haven't heard of Zapier. They haven't heard of Make. They don't know how to even that automation is even a thing that they could venture into to automate tasks. You shared a very simple and interesting use case that you used recently during your vacation. Even just sharing that could be a very simple way of saying, hey, this is a very simple thing that you created of just what automation even is and how it could be used for a pastor.
Yeah. So, pre-show, we were talking about different ways that pastors and church leaders might use tools like this. And, I was at Disney with my family at the beginning of February. And while I was out, rather than just set up your, stereotypical, I am out of office, please email this person if you need that. I was like, how can I use AI to make something cool? And intelligent that actually solves problems rather than just sends an email. And so I used a service called make.com to basically, make at its core, things like Zapier, things like Make are services that connect all their services together and help them talk to each other. That concept of an API, it's basically doing that work for you. So you just drag and drop and say, I want this thing to talk to that thing, then do that, and then do this next. So I use make.com to say, watch my emails. When an email comes in, talk to ChatGPT and figure out what needs to be done with this. Then if response needs to be done with this, write the response, send a response. If this needs to be flagged for follow-up, flagged for follow-up. And so if this needs to be converted to a task, convert to a task. If this needs to be forwarded to somebody, forward to somebody. And so you can branch this out and make it as complicated as you want. But essentially, like, I was able to create that autoresponder to kind of do some of the work for me. Email comes in. Hey, question about photos. I help lead our photo team at our church. Question about photos. Well, Rob's out, so this would be a great question for Kinley, who can help you out in the meantime. So write the response, direct them to Kinley, explain that I'm on vacation. And now I've solved a problem. They don't need to wait till I get back in order to get a response to that. So that's a pretty simple, straightforward use case of how, like, we're leveraging AI technology to help with real world problems. Now, I will say, I got an email, or not an email, a Slack message while I was on vacation from our IT guy saying that, hey, our HR team got a response from your chatbot who talked to my boss, who talked to me, who wants you to take that down. So we need to also be working within our organization's culture and give people a heads up before we do stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
Next is write the AI policy for our church.
Yes. Well, how about a pastor who, so there, starting with, you mentioned make.com, there's also Zapier.
Mm-hmm.
These are two, Zapier is probably the most well-known automation platform, and there's a whole bunch of other ones that pop up. Make is probably maybe number 2 behind Zapier. There's a few others, but if a pastor, how could a pastor use automation like 101? Like if they're saying, I'm making a Zapier or Make account, I am interested in automating something.
Mm-hmm.
What is 1 or 2 very simple ways a pastor could venture into automation?
Yeah, so I think the question starts with what is the something, right? Like you can sit down and you can build something arbitrarily, but ideally you're going to be solving a problem. And so in my case, my problem was I'm on vacation. I don't want to respond to emails, and I also don't want to be faced with a deluge of emails when I get back to the office. How can I use technology to help with that? And so defining what are we trying to accomplish, I think, is one of the early steps. Another early step is what tools are available and at my disposal to help solve that problem. And if there's alignment between those two things, you've got a candidate for something to automate. If there's misalignment there to where like, okay, I've got a problem, but the tools aren't really equipped to solve that problem, you're going to have a bad time. Or if you're like, hey, I've got tools and I want to do something cool, but I don't have a problem, so I'm going to go in search of a problem, you're probably also going to have a bad time. So when those two things are aligned, then you can create something that's really helpful and interesting and neat. And so for the pastor who's like thinking, okay, I want to explore this for the first time, I would say sit down and really think about like, what are the things you do on a regular basis that you could, if you had an intern, for example, easily delegate to an intern. Because if it takes complex reasoning, if it takes specialized reasoning, it's probably going to be difficult to automate. But if it's something that you can have a system or a process for, so in my case, email comes in. If it's about photography, it goes to this person. If it's about social media, it goes to that person. If it's about project management, it goes to this person. If it's formulaic, then it can be automated. So I in almost every situation, whether it's just using ChatGPT straight or doing things like automating tasks, I advocate thinking about AI as if it's an intern. In an intern in your organization, they don't have a whole lot of experience. They're going to need a lot of coaching and handholding. They don't know your organization like you do. And so you need to be very clear and explicit about this is what you need to do. Same thing with AI tools. You got to be super clear. They don't know what you know. And if you expect them to know what you know, you're going to be disappointed. So I'd say sit down and kind of take an audit of what are the things that you do on a regular basis to say, could this be something that I could automate with AI? So let's take your example. You're not in a church leadership role, but you're in a business role, and you've got this is kind of a lot of the same challenges that a pastor would have. What's something on your plate that you do on a regular basis that you could outsource to a VA or an intern, but you just haven't yet?
Yeah, there's probably a ton of things. There's probably things where if I receive emails, it actually would be nice if there's some of those emails were automatically turned into tasks within Asana for me. So that would be something. If an email could turn into a task. We're just launching our first AI cohorts for under AI for churches. And I realized it would be nice if I could just, automate a custom email in response to those, or some kind of, more human sounding email in response. So those are two very simple things that probably churches deal with that kind of stuff as well.
Yep. Yeah. So a workflow, actually building the workflow would be outside of the scope, obviously, of a podcast. I'm going to give you the high level view. And then I also have a document that I created for a workshop I taught on this exact topic that I can share with you, that you can then share with your audience that has examples of all these things, links exactly how to get set up and started. And so you can just pass that on, and it will cover all of the technical side of what we're about to talk about. I use make.com. And the reason I use Make is because it's a quarter of the price of Zapier. And I think it's just better. It also has a free tier. So you can have up to 2 scenarios running at a time, absolutely free. So you can get started that way. Don't have to spend a penny on it. The one thing that you do need to be aware of is in order to I'm using ChatGPT colloquially because that's what we understand, that's what we interact with. But ChatGPT is a product that interacts with the GPT service from OpenAI. And so Make can't access your ChatGPT account directly. It needs to use the API. So that is a separate thing to sign up for. That's all going to be in that documentation as well, with specifically like, here's where you go, here's what you click, here's what you fill out, and away we go. So be aware of that. You're going to have to set up an account for that. The corollary, though, is that if you don't have a ChatGPT subscription, it's not something extra to pay for. So you don't have to have the ChatGPT Plus subscription and the API. And so if you just want to have a pay-as-you-go thing, you can use the API in this way. So in order to build out a workflow to do what you described, you said, hey, we got an email. I want to convert it to a task in Asana. And we can use the cohort as an example. Make has actions, or it has triggers and has actions. So a trigger is when this happens, and an action is then do this, right? So in this case, the action or the trigger would be I receive an email. So there's a Gmail module in Make. You say, watch my emails. Then every time an email comes in, it will kick off that workflow. So, all right, we're watching emails. A new email comes in. What decision do we need to make here? We need to make a decision. Does this need to be converted into a task? And so in your, just if you were processing your own email, how would you make that decision? What things would you be looking for to say this is something that I would create a task in Asana for?
Well, for the cohort thing, and let's say I wanted to create a task to follow up, with somebody. I could know that by the subject line, or there's the word cohort or consult or something like that in the email, in the body of the email. So those would be keywords that would indicate, that's particular to those emails.
Yep. So right there, you're thinking of this in a kind of traditional programming model of I need to identify specific things, specific words that will then trigger. But the cool thing about using AI to do this, like you could do that without AI. You could say in make.com, like have a filter if body contains the word cohort or whatever, then do this. But when we add AI to the mix, what if they don't use the word cohort? What if like, hey, David, that thing's coming up that we talked about, where I'm going to learn AI. I need you to remind me about X, Y, or Z. And they don't use those words. AI works in concepts, not specific words. And so as long as you can give the AI the instruction on what are you looking for, and then what do you want it to do, you don't even have to worry about getting every word as long as the concept is there. And so that's a huge benefit to using AI for these things rather than a traditional programming model. And so outside of just the words, what are some like concepts or themes that might show up that would convert to a task for you?
You mean for that specifically?
Sure.
Yeah. Just if somebody was just asking about, like asking about, hey, can we meet to talk? Hey, I'm interested in talking more about like a consultation for our church on AI. We want to get started. And so they might just say, hey, look, I would love to, it's somebody I don't know. And I get these emails of like, hey, we just want to talk about AI consultation, or let's meet. I mean, it could be a formal form or just an email.
Yep.
And so that would convert into a task to say, hey, follow up with this person.
Yep. Yeah. And if you're speaking of forms, you can connect Google Forms or Typeform or any of those things to Make as well. So you can say, hey, fill out a form. That's your trigger. Then do these things. So basically, like we get the email and then we need to send it into OpenAI's GPT. So basically saying, hey, AI, I want you to read this email. And then you're going to give the instructions just like you would give an intern to say, all right, these are the things these are the actions that we could possibly take out of this email. So, all right, one thing that I tend to get emails about is a first-time consultation, we'll call it. If I get an email about a first-time consultation, what I want you to do is, write a task title, write a description, and include the context, and contact info for that person, and create an Asana task. And so we've got a trigger, which is our email. We've got an action, which is send this to ChatGPT and get a response back. And then we process that response and say, okay, if the response is create task, then there's an action to create a task in Asana. And then you can take the response that you just got, feed it into the Asana action and say, all right, put my title here, put my description here, assign it to this person, and then we're done. And so in that case, now you've got it set it and forget it. Any new consultation that comes in, you're going to have AI process that and create the Asana task for you. So you don't need to expend that brain power to be like, oh, did I follow up with that person? You've offloaded that to a tool that now frees up your brain power to actually do the thing, right? I will say there's a caveat in there, and so the piece between when the GPT model responds and when it gets to Asana, there's a little bit of logic that needs to happen there, but I cover all that in the documentation that I'll send you to. So basically, you're going to ask the LLM to give it to you in a specific format that Make can read, and then split out the different pieces intelligently.
Yeah. So for people who are listening like that, if you can't tell, Rob is very smart about this area and about this topic. And Rob, go ahead and tell us about the AI collective. So just because I've joined the group and I saw the documentation about automation. I haven't read it yet, but I'm very excited to read it. And so I go ahead and just tell us a little bit about what you started.
Yeah. So the AI collaborative is born out of just, I get a dozen emails or Facebook messages a week. Rob, can you help me with this thing? And I would love to say yes to all those, but I also work full time. I've got a family. I've got hobbies. I've got freelance work, and so I'm like, I just can't say yes to many, if any of those. And so I got to thinking, like, all right, how can I say yes? And the answer was like, what if I just have like a membership community that's not a cohort to where it's going to be a formal thing to where we have a very set, strict program. It's not just a membership site where I can just get resources, but I don't have any support. Basically, it's like, how can I give people access to me to kick ideas off of and take all the time and experience that I'm putting into these things just personally because I like it, and multiply that to make it so that other people can do that. And so that's where the AI collaborative idea was born. And basically, like, it's just a pilot that I'm trying right now. It's a 6-month thing to where we've got a private Discord community. For a one-time price, you're in for the 6 months with your peers, so you're able to interact and ask questions. Anything that you're working on, I'm in Discord. Ask me a question. I'll do my best to help you out with it. We're doing monthly workshops, and so we're kind of working through kind of a curriculum where we're going to start with LLMs and actually custom GPTs next week. We're going to move into image and video generation, and then automation as well. So we're going to cover all these things in that 6-month kind of scope. But really, it's just like a space to explore these things to where like I can dedicate a little bit more attention to, because it can replace some of my freelance work. It's not my get rich quick scheme. It's not my, I'm going to be the next Gary Vee or Tim Robbins and, blow out this huge community. It's just like, how can I help people and create an environment where that is a thing?
If by the time this podcast comes out, like it might be, have started for just a little bit, if somebody was interested in just, expressing interest in that community, what is there a site or somewhere where people could go?
Yeah, my website is roblauder.com, and the collaborative information is on roblauder.com/collaborative.
Okay.
And then, so, depending on when this comes out, if you are super eager and want to jump in, just reach out and I'll make it happen. So
yeah, cool. Yeah, that sounds good. We'll put that in the show notes for everyone. And because it's one of those things where going down into the automation, it's like I've used like Zapier the most, and going into Zapier, and it's really not that complicated to create a general process. Like, I mean, I feel like Zapier has basically built a chat GPT type interface on the front of their their process, saying, just tell us what you want to do in human language. And then it'll kind of create it from there. And then, of course, you need to create once the big picture, like A goes to B, you need to explain to it how you want it to work. But yeah, there's so much in automation that is possible, so much that's potential, so many tasks that pastors do every single week that we could probably just automate and like use ChatGPT or some other LLM to help automate that stuff.
Yeah. I will, since we're on the topic of AI, I was trying to pull up a sample workflow, but I got 50,000 workflows in here and I can't find the one I'm looking for. But while we're on the topic of AI, Make actually has an AI tool to where you just say, hey, here's what I want to do, and it'll build a workflow for you. You just then plug in the pieces. So that's a cool tool that Make will do. Again, describing in a natural language, it handles the connections for you. You just fill in the blanks and away you go.
Yeah. I think we're just like changing gears to kind of just the mind of Rob.
Yeah, that's a dangerous place to go, man.
Yes. Well, I'm kind of curious because you're in all of the AI church communities and you're hearing what people are talking about and you're researching stuff. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that you're excited about that's coming out that you're like waiting for?
Yeah. So yeah, I work in a creative context. And so for kind of the pastoral side, I think LLMs are really your big win. So things like ChatGPT, Claude, if you want to use that, just because like all the tasks that a pastor is going to do, research, organization, administrative, things like that, those fall into the realm of LLMs. What I'm really excited about is AI video has been possible for a while. But we're on the cusp of some like really, really cool video models. Like at this point, and for better or worse, this is an entirely different conversation, but I've trained my own image model recently, and some of the images are indistinguishable from reality. That's really cool, and it's also horrifying, particularly in an election year. The next cusp of that is video and audio. And so that's coming. OpenAI has a model called Sora, which is coming out, and it's like mind blowing. It's still like it's like the early days of image generation, to where like, okay, yeah, that's not quite right. I can tell that's AI, but look where we were a year ago with image generation. Look where we are today. That's going to happen. That acceleration is going to happen in every area. So the immediate cusp is more interesting generative AI tools. And then there's nothing definitive in this area, but I can't help but imagine with all the progress that we've seen with Google and with Claude, OpenAI hasn't released a new model since last year. And I'm fully expecting them to just like drop something that's going to blow us out of the water, and then leapfrog them again ahead of the competition in terms of all the capabilities that is possible to do.
Yeah.
And it might be a couple months out, but I'm eagerly awaiting that.
Isn't it crazy how it like the things that are coming out new, how fast they're coming out? Like right. we're talking about in series of months, not years, like 6 months. Like we expect that like as soon as a Sora drops, somebody else is gonna come out. But version 2 of Sora, I expect that to come out 6 months later, and it's gonna be as double as good as Sora version 1 as soon as it drops in the next few months, or it could be weeks. I don't know when that Sora is going to drop. Maybe by the time this podcast comes out, Sora version 0.1 is going to be available for people to play around with.
Yeah. Well, the thing about this area of technology, so LLMs, image generation, audio generation, video generation, all of it is really the same technology rearranged. And so the progress and innovation within this space is in 2 areas. It's not in the technology itself, it's in the quality of the model that's created. And so using better data, using a better training process goes a long way there. And it's in the software that's being built around it. So things like custom GPTs, or some of the church specific AI powered products. They're just wrappers for a GPT API that like if you want to put the time into building out something in Make or building out a sermon thing like I'm building in a custom GPT, you can, but that's not for everybody. And so developers can come in and they can create cool technology that's using the technology of AI and adding their own piece to it to help solve a problem. That's really where innovation is lying currently. And so you're going to see like the individual types of models get better and better as we go. We're going to see better LLMs. Like, I mean, just look at how revolutionary ChatGPT was a year ago. And how now everybody's got an LLM. Like I can go on a Facebook and chat with a chatbot in Facebook Messenger. I don't know why I'd want to, but I could do that if I wanted to. So everybody's got an LLM. They're going to be on your device soon. Apple, with their next iPhone, is probably going to be loading that thing up with AI. And the cool thing about Apple, I think, and I've taken this approach with AI as well, is you ever see Simon Sinek's Start With Why?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you haven't, it's like it's a famous TED Talk from the early TED Talk days. A guy named Simon Sinek did like a 4-minute presentation that like really flips the script on how you think about stuff. He said that there's 3 concentric circles about talking about an idea. You've got the why, which is the center. You've got the what, which is the how, which is the next ring out, and then the what on the very outside. And he said like, hey, most companies talk about things starting from the outside in. So like, hey, here's what I'm doing. Here's how you do it. And then maybe here's why I'm doing it. So he gives the example of Microsoft. We're going to create a great computer, and that computer is going to do all these things. And the reason we're doing that is because we want to enhance productivity, right? Apple flips the script. He said Apple starts with a why, and they say, with everything we believe, we want to challenge the status quo and make. We do that by creating products that are beautiful, functional, and easy to use. And we also happen to create a laptop, a phone, an iPod, all these other things. And so people are adopting AI in the same way. And even it's like Microsoft versus what I can only assume is coming from Apple. Microsoft was like, AI in your face, right? You got Copilot, you got all these other things. And I think Apple's going to be more subtly integrated to where it's going to be just like every other one of their products. It's just part of the experience, right? You're not thinking about it. You're not thinking about it being AI. And I think for like, hey, you and I, we're just sitting here, we're talking about AI because we're nerds. We love to dig in and try new stuff. We're open to it. Reality is a lot of the population. Like anytime I post like an AI image on any of my social media feeds, I get people with like sad face reactions just because it's AI. I'm like, do you say that about Photoshop? Probably. But so there's a large portion of the population that's averse to even the idea of AI because they haven't experienced it, they don't know what it is, and they fear it, or they just don't understand it. And I think Apple's going to like just confront that head on and get people warmed up to the idea of using AI. So that's rabbit hole, but another thing that I'm excited about coming down the pike.
They will.
My reasoning there was that innovation currently is making existing things better. There's a question mark that I don't know what it is. And people are like, you hear a lot of talk about AGI, right? It's AGI. What is AGI? Nobody knows what AGI is. Like there's a technical definition, but when they say that, everybody means something well different. But basically it's like taking these models from, when I click go on a message in ChatGPT, all it's doing is reading the entire conversation and making a new response. It's not reasoning in the way that humans tend to reason. It can't do anything of its own accord. Like it takes a human to push the button. And things like agents, which are GPTs, LLMs, models that talk to each other and do specialized things, and kind of like autonomous LLMs or AI models, those are a different beast. And I expect as soon as somebody cracks that code, it's going to blow up, just like everything else has recently. Yeah.
Rob, you just said like 4 things that were probably like 4 different podcasts we could talk about. So for any of you who just, heard Rob mention even those 4 things, you're like, oh man, there's so much I don't know about. Then like, don't worry. Like we'll just have to have you on again. We'll talk about all of those things as well.
Once our robot overlords are monitoring things, we might not be able to talk so freely about them. But in the meantime,
That's funny. Yeah, that's it's one of those like things where anyways, Rob, we could talk for a very long time and about all this stuff. So I think that the coolest thing if somebody's listening to this for the first time, and let's just say that they're thinking about automation and they're like, man, there's so much I don't know about. We're going to share in our show notes the document that you can share with us, and we're going to have a lot more conversations about automation. It's something that you talk about in the collaborative. It's something I hope we'll be talking about in our cohorts. It's something there's a lot more to learn. So we're going to be journeying with all this stuff together. But thanks so much for your time, Rob. And it was a great conversation. I really appreciate the work you're doing. Just you spending time learning you're doing it on behalf of the church and Big C. And so thank you for your time. You're investing in that. So great to chat.
Yeah, always enjoy it, always open to it. And then also, if you're listening and you want to continue the conversation, jump into the Facebook group. I also should probably mention within the AI Collaborative, we've got a portion of the Discord server open for anybody as well, just so if you want to hang out and chat, you can do that. So we'll include that in the show notes as well. And look forward to connecting to anybody who's listened to this who wants to nerd out over this stuff with me.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rob.
Yeah, man. Talk soon.